Okay, I'm going to do the air brake tests. Before I do that, I would like to explain a few things. This is my RPM. We're gonna use this one, so pay attention to it. This gauge is the RPM. Also, I have here primary gauge, secondary gauge. Primary air brake gauge, secondary air brake gauge. Also, we have here spring brakes, one parking for truck, one parking for the trailer. Also, they call it emergency. This is my transmission lever. When I say I'm gonna depress the clutch, here I have a gas, this is brake, and this one is the clutch. So when we say we're gonna depress the clutch, that's how we depress the clutch. Okay, depressing the clutch. Also, we say pushing the clutch, push in the clutch. And this is again the transmission lever. When I want to engage gear, I depress the clutch and I move it. I engage the low gear. Okay, all right. Now I'm gonna do the air brake tests. Before we do the air brake tests, you have to start with your safety. Your safety has four things. First, you fasten your seat belts the same way you fasten your seat belt on your small car. So you're gonna fasten your seat belt, okay, and you're gonna say my seat belt is not broken or damaged or frayed, and it buckles in properly, or it latches in properly. Two, you pull the spring brakes out and you say both my spring brakes are engaged. Three, you depress the clutch and you make sure you are in neutral. You shaking it, you are in neutral. Three, you're gonna test your ABS system if it's working. The way you will do it, you will turn the ignition key in on position. Once I turn the ignition key in on position, without starting the truck, an indicator light here, the ABS indicator light, is gonna come on the dashboard. Stays for a few seconds, then it will switch off, indicating is a good system. If stays on, it means it's not working properly. I'm gonna turn the ignition key in on position. The ABS here, this is the ABS. It's switch off, so it's working good. First test what we're gonna do is governor cutout test. Governor cutout test. We will start the engine and we will build the pressure all the way to the max. Before I do that, I'm gonna watch my primary gauge and secondary gauge to see how much air I have in the system. The book says the needle has to be rising when we start the engine to build up the pressure to the max. They are already high, so I need to fan the brake, bring the gauges below 100 psi. Why below 100 psi? Because the governor valve will open at no less than 100 psi. Okay, so you fan the brake, and when I say I'm fanning my brake, this is my brake here, that's fanning my brake. That's fanning my brake. And when I'm fanning my brake, my needles start dropping. So the needles drop below 100 psi. Now is a good time to start the engine. So I'm gonna start the engine. I turn the ignition key on position, all the way. Fire the truck. and I'm gonna build the pressure all the way to the max, meaning I'm doing governor cutout, which should happen no more than 140 psi. Normally it occurs between 120 to 140 psi, and the way I know the governor valve closed is when I see the needles in both primary and secondary gauges stop rising. Right now, if you watch carefully, the needles on both primary and secondary, they are rising. To speed up the process, we tell the examiner I'm gonna rev the engine a little bit. Here is my RPM, this is the RPM. I'm gonna rev the engine, it means I'm gonna push the gas in. I'm gonna gas it up. When I revving the engine, I should not pass 1500. Usually, we keep the needle in the middle, about 12, 13. Too much revving, too much gas will hurt the engine. And at the same time, I'm watching my both needles rising till they stop and they are not rising anymore. As you see here, my needles on both primary and the secondary, they are not rising, and they stop rising at 125. That's 125. It's above 120, so 125. 125 is my governor cutout, and it means in the same time my tanks are full with the air. It's a good test. So governor cutout test, it should happen no more than 140 psi, and the way I know it is when my needles in both primary and secondary gauges cease to rise or stop to rise. Usually it will happen between 120 to 140. At this time, they stop at 125. It's a good test. Next test I'm gonna do is apply leakage test. Apply leakage test, the book says engine has to be off and spring brakes has to be released to send air everywhere on the truck. Before I do that, I need to secure the vehicle with the low gear. So I'm gonna depress the clutch, engage low gear. I'm putting first gear. Now careful, I cannot release the clutch right now because the truck will jump, because I'm engaged. So I will turn off the engine first. The engine is off. Now I can release the clutch. And then I will turn the ignition key in on position, because as you see, I don't see the gauges. Okay, the gauges is off. I need to see them. So I turn the ignition key in on position so I can see the gauges, and I'm gonna release the parking. I'm going to release the trailer brake, and I'm not going to roll because I'm secure with the low gear. I wait till the needles settle, which they did settle already at 120. Now I'm gonna push the service brake down. This is the service brake here. I'm gonna push it down. When I push it down, the gauges is gonna move. The needles in both gauges, let me do it here. The needles in both gauges, primary and secondary, they're gonna move down. Look, watch it. I'm pushing it right now. See how they drop a little bit? You wait till the needles settle, and then you take the reading. This is about 110 psi. 110 psi is my start. I should not lose more than 4 psi in combination vehicle in 1 minute. I will put the time here 0. and I will wait 60 seconds. While I'm waiting 60 seconds, my foot continuously will push the service brake down all the time, and I will be watching both my needles if they will drop any psi. One more time, I'm doing apply leakage test. I should not lose more than 4 psi in 1 minute in combination vehicle. Your minute, remember, your minute starts after you push down the service brake and you wait till the needles settle. Okay, I have here, my time is over. I'm looking at my primary and secondary gauge needles, and still they read 110 psi. So I did not lose any psi. It's a good test. Always you have to specify if the test is good or bad. So it's a good test. After that, I'm gonna release my service brake. Next test I'm gonna do, they call it low air warning device. The system should warn me with the buzzer or light or combination of both when the air pressure in the system drop no more or no lower than 55. No lower than 55. Normally it's between 55 and 75. I will fan the brake till the buzzer and light comes on, and then I will read the needles on my gauges, and I will tell the examiner the number it reads or the value it reads. So let's fan the brake and do the test. Come on. All right, I'm watching the primary and secondary, and I'm fanning my brake, and this is how I fan it again. Okay, it's the brake. That's how I fan it. It should come between 75 and 55. Okay, first light comes and second light comes also on the buzzer as you hear it. They comes about 62 psi is a good test. Next test I'm gonna do is automatic emergency pop out for the spring brakes. My spring brakes, they should pop out automatically when the air pressure drop in the system between 45 till 20. The way I will do it, I will fan my brake till they will pop out. My eyes should be focusing here to see if both spring brakes they're gonna come out or pop out in the same time, or the trailer will come before the truck. Sometimes the trailer comes before the parking. So I'm gonna fan the brake. Once they pop out, I will look at the gauges and take the reading. As you see, they come out in the same time, and they come out when the gauges at 30 psi. So it's a good test. Next test I'm gonna do is I'm gonna test my parking brake, then trailer brake, then the service brake. But before I do that, since my air pressure dropped to 30, so I have no air in the system, so I need to build up the pressure back to the maximum. I'm gonna start the engine and build up the pressure again. But before I do that, I need to put the transmission lever in a neutral. So I depress the clutch. Now I push the transmission lever to the neutral. And now I'm ready to start the engine. And I'm gonna build the pressure all the way to the max. Of course, the vehicle is secured because the spring brakes, they are already engaged, because a minute ago they pop out. To speed up the process, to build the pressure faster, so I'm gonna rev the engine, but no more than 1500. Why we call it 1500? This is 15 times 100, this is 1500 RPM. So, as we said, we keep the needle in the middle here between 12 and 13, and we're watching the needles in both primary and secondary gauge to build the pressure all the way to the max. Till the needle stop moving. What I'm doing right now, in different words, I'm doing governor cutout one more time. So anytime you build the pressure to the max, you're doing governor cutout. As you see, the needles, they are not moving up anymore, they are not rising anymore, they ceased. It means I have full capacity. Now I'm gonna test my parking brake. My parking brake should be able to hold the vehicle from moving. So I will engage the parking brake since I'm testing it, and I will release the trailer because I don't want it. And I'm not touching the service brake. This is the service brake. I'm not touching the service brake. Okay? I wait till I don't hear any more air coming from the vehicle. I still hear some air. Okay? The air hissing or the noise, I don't hear air noise anymore. So I'm gonna depress the clutch, engage low gear, and now I'll try to move the vehicle against that brake. The only brake is engaged is the parking. I start releasing my clutch slowly till the truck will shake. Let me take it from here so you can see how the truck shake. All right, the truck shook. And the reason for that the truck shook is because the parking brake holding the vehicle from moving forward. Is a good test. Now I'm gonna test my trailer. So I engage trailer, then I release the parking. Always I engage the trailer before I release the parking. Okay? I'm not touching the service brake. I'm still in low gear. I will try to move the vehicle against the trailer. Again, one more time. The truck will shake. See how the truck shake? One more time. The truck shook. Is a good test. Now I'm gonna test my service brake. So I'm gonna release the parking and the trailer, but before I do that, I will push the service brake. Then I'm gonna release the parking, I'm gonna release the trailer, and I'm engaged in low gear. Now I have to move the vehicle 5 miles per hour and then slam on my service brake. The service brake should stop the vehicle immediately with no delay, and I should not hear weird noises coming from the brake system, and the truck should not go right or left. Okay, so here you go. I'm moving the truck slowly. Move it forward. As you see, I'm moving forward, and then clutch it and slam on the brake. The truck will stop, and you will tell the examiner the service brake stopped the vehicle immediately with no delay. The truck did not go right or left, and I did not hear any weird noises coming from the brake system. After you do that, you engage both spring brakes, you put neutral, and now you turn off the engine. And you tell the examiner, I'm done with testing my air brakes. All brake tests are good.